All right. Your life will stay the same until you do this, and I'll explain more of what I'm thinking about. And hopefully, this video helps you guys because it truly has changed my life. So, with what I just said, how can you accomplish anything in life is kind of the overall question. You can accomplish almost anything, but probably not in the way you think. Most people believe that success is about finding a right strategy and they can find a right routine or a right morning ritual to get them way ahead of others. And it's true. Those things could help, but the truth with all of this is it's a lot less exciting than that. Most of what you want is sitting on the other side of doing the same boring thing for much longer than you want to do that boring thing. And that is the part that nobody wants to hear because we are so obsessed with intensity and life changing opportunities and situations. And we love that dopamine hit when there's a huge interaction or a huge change in your life. We love transformation stories. We love the person who changes their life overnight, the businesses that suddenly explode out of nowhere, or athletes that just become unstoppable once they figure out what works. The student that completely turns their grades around last minute, right before finals. Um, but we really see the thousands of completely ordinary moments that created that result, right? So it's a long journey and it's a lot more than just that one night decision. And most people don't know that. We see outcomes, but we don't see that repetition that creates those outcomes. And that creates one of the biggest lies about achievement, that successful people somehow feel different than you do. They don't. They get tired, they lose motivation, they question themselves and they get bored with the things that are in their lives. And they have days where they would rather do almost anything except the thing that they know they need to do. And the difference is that at some point they stop treating their feelings like instructions and they treat it with and like discipline. Discipline is not being motivated all the time. Discipline is realizing that motivation was never supposed to be in control, right? You don't ask yourself whether you feel like brushing your teeth. You don't sit there waiting for inspiration. You just do it. And it became part of who you are. And I think that is the real goal in long term, right? Not to become more motivated, but to become the type of person who no longer needs motivation to act. And because the problem with motivation is that it makes you feel like progress should feel good, but in reality, progress definitely does not feel good, especially when you hit those losses or hit those days that aren't beneficial. You know what I mean? And when you have those in your life, it feels like crap inside, but in the long run, looking back, you can see that as progress. And it has in my life personally, I'm currently on a project for Nordic Nutrition. We're creating pre-workouts, so if you guys want to check it out, nordicnutrition.co. Um, but yeah, there's lots of ups and downs with this business, and there's days that aren't as good as others. And, in the future, looking back at those days, they obviously were beneficial and they taught me things, but in the moment, they did not feel like they're teaching me something, if that makes sense. So, sometimes it can be humiliating. Sometimes your work for such a long time, you work for months and nobody notices. And sometimes you get worse before you get better, like I was saying. And sometimes you give everything you have and you still fail in the moment. And this is where most people misunderstand accomplishments. They think failure means process isn't working, right? And failure is part of the process, and you need to know that. The question isn't whether you are going to fail, because you 100% will, and successful people failed more times than the unsuccessful people have even tried. So keep that in mind. The question is what meaning you assign to failure when it happens. So most people take failure personally, right? They fail an exam and they think they're stupid. They launch something that doesn't work and they think they're not meant for business because of that one failed launch. They miss a workout and decide they lost all of their discipline because of that one day or that one workout. They get rejected and start questioning their own value. Failure does not tell you who you are, it tells you what happened and how you can change your trajectory from that moment. And that's it. All it is information. And the faster you can separate your identity from the results, the faster you can improve. Because if failure destroys you emotionally, you'll spend your entire life avoiding situations where failure is impossible. And unfortunately, almost everything worth accomplishment carries the possibility of failure. So eventually, you have to make decisions, right? And these decisions being, would you rather protect your ego or build your life? And you usually don't get to do both or choose both. Accomplishment requires you to repeatedly place yourself in situations where you might look stupid, you might lose, somebody might judge you, where you might discover that you're not as good as you thought you were, and you have to come back tomorrow anyways and go through it all over again. And that is the part people call discipline. But I think discipline goes way deeper than just that surface definition. Discipline is keeping promises to a future version of yourself who cannot defend themselves yet. Think about that. Every person you, or scratch that, every time you procrastinate, you are making life harder for somebody. That person is you tomorrow, right? Because you're making yourself comfortable in that moment. And there's consequences to that in the long run. You skip studying tonight, and tomorrow you're going to have more anxiety, and that test is not going to go as well as if you just studied for it. Your body, let's say you skip a workout, you avoid that difficult workout during that day, and then your future body will get the results. And that can be good or bad. If you go to the gym, you're going to have a better physique. You're going to feel better, you're going to look better. If you skip the gym, you're going to get the results of not going to the gym. You're not going to feel as good, you're not going to look as good, and so on and so forth, right? Let's say you spend money you know you shouldn't spend. Your future self gets that debt and it builds up over time. So we constantly steal from our future selves to make our present selves more comfortable. And then we wonder why we feel stuck. And the person you become is being decided in extremely small moments every single day. It's in your present that matters most to help your future. Not during the dramatic moments, but these are during ordinary moments. When your alarm goes off, when you open up your laptop, when you have the opportunity to quit early, when you're scrolling on your phone, right? When you're tired, when you're frustrated, when you're not seeing progress, these moments may feel insignificant in the moment, but they accumulate over time and they could build you up for the better or worse in so many ways. And your life is largely the compound interest of decisions that once seemed to be very, very small and matter very small to you. And that's why accomplishing something difficult can feel so unfair. You can do everything right today and see almost nothing happen. And you can go to the gym and look exactly the same tomorrow, right? But take that idea of the gym. If you go to the gym consistently and you have a legitimate plan that is pushing you to your limits and pushing you for the better, half a year from now, think about the results. You're going to look so much better, right? So you can study for hours and still feel like you barely understand the material. You can post content for months and nobody watches. But we want immediate evidence, and because of that, it's affecting our future potential. And we want the world to reassure us that our effort's working, but most of the time it actually doesn't. So you have to learn how to work without applause. You have to learn how to continue before there's proof that continuing is worth it. And that is where belief becomes important. Not blind belief, but sitting around, imagining your future, and then going day in and day out and working towards that. Anybody can say they believe they'll succeed. But if your behavior changes the second progress slows down, you didn't believe it. You didn't believe the goal. And it was all just in your head. It was completely fake. You believed in the excitement. And there's a big difference between those two. Real belief looks boring. It looks like showing up again and again and again and again and so on and so forth, long after the novelty disappears. This is also why you need to stop worshiping perfection. Perfection is going to destroy you, and I need to tell you this now. You just need to jump in and get to work. Don't wait for the perfect moment to do it. You just need to go and do it. Perfection is one of the most sophisticated forms of procrastination, and people tell themselves they're waiting for the perfect time, the perfect plan, the perfect business idea, the perfect opportunity. And often what they really are waiting for is just a guarantee that they won't fail. And that guarantee does not exist. You become ready by doing the thing before you feel ready. Confidence comes after evidence, every time, not before it. And you don't become confident and then take action. You take action, you survive from that decision of taking action, and then you improve and you adjust your ways and you become better from when you started. And then your brain slowly begins to realize something. And that's maybe I can do this, right? And going through the mud, going through those situations, that is how confidence is built. That's through proof. And the same thing is true for discipline. You don't become disciplined by telling yourself you're disciplined, right? That just doesn't make any sense. You become disciplined every time you do something that your weaker impulse told you not to do. And every one of those decisions is a vote every single day. A vote for the person you're becoming. And eventually, those votes create an identity within inside of you. You stop saying, I'm trying to become someone who works out. You become the person who trains. And then after you train, you can just tell people, yeah, I've been working out. I've been doing this. I've been doing that. Talk about your accomplishments, not what you could do, right? Let's jump to something else. You stop saying, I'm trying to study more. You become someone who studies, and then you get that A on the test, and then you could talk about the A that you got from the exam, right? You stop saying, I'm trying to build something. You become a builder, you create it, and then you can flex to everybody that thing that you built. It's quite simple and easy. You just got to talk about the results, go through the mud, have discipline. Your goals are eventually going to end. And goals are temporary and they adjust over time, but identity continues. So that identity I was talking about a second ago, it continues. If your entire motivation comes from reaching one destination, there is a good chance that you'll fall apart after you reach it. You're going to hit that one stepping stone and then everything's going to crumble to the ground. You're going to fall off the steps. There's a lot more than just one. You can strive for one, but make sure you're striving for others. Create goals constantly. Create that identity and keep with it and keep moving. So, if you become someone capable of doing hard things consistently, you can apply that person to almost anything in your life. And that's why we see successful people. It's not just like one little section in their life. They're successful with almost everything because of that identity that they have created. They can be not they, you can be successful in fitness, school, businesses, relationships, careers, art, money, so many different sections in your life. Your exact goal may change. Like I'm saying, goals are temporary, but the person capable of accomplishing those remains the exact same person that you need to become and you should become. And maybe that is a deeper meaning behind discipline, right? You're not just building the result, you're building the person who can produce those results. But every difficult day changes you slightly. Every time you continue when you want to stop, you prove something to yourself and it changes you. It changes you in the long run for sure. And every time you choose discomfort now for something you care about later, you strengthen that identity within inside of you. And eventually, you realize that the goal itself was only part of the reward. The bigger reward was becoming someone you can trust, someone that you can look up to, and someone that can help guide you. It's all up to you. They have the evidence. They've gone through it, which is you. They have the history. They know what's happening when things get hard. They keep going. This is what you need to put inside of your mind. And that is why I think you can accomplish almost anything in your life. You can, you 100% can. And when you tell yourself you can't, you are 100% wrong. And there's a quote here, actually. This is a good one to jump into. There's two people in this world, one that says they can and one that says they can't. You guys have heard this one. Both of them are right. And it's up to you to choose who you want to become. You're not special. The universe, at this planet that you live in, it doesn't owe you any results because you haven't earned it. You're going to start getting things once you earn it. So stop asking when the perfect time to start is, because that doesn't exist. Stop asking whether failure means you should quit, because it doesn't. Pick something that matters to you, accept the price that comes with it, and then pay that price repeatedly, especially when it becomes boring, because discipline is better than motivation every single time. And when it's boring and repetitive, that's when you're going to see results. That's when you're going to see a big change in your life, when you can stick with it in that boring repetitiveness. Because eventually you'll look back and realize something very, very strange in your life. There was never one moment where everything changed. Not a single morning, not a single decision. Rarely. There are a couple situations where it's like starting a business, right? That is a huge change. But it's not, for the most part, it's not a single decision. You simply just kept going long enough that one day the person who once wanted that goal became the person capable of achieving that goal. And that is how you accomplish almost anything. Thanks for watching.